No, this is not clickbait. No, this is not a joke. Liu Xiaojun, Tian Tao, and Yang Zhe, 3 world record holders, all squatted with fake weights in this session. And how do I know? Well, because I was there filming them. Of course, this wasn't them actually trying to get away with anything. They weren't trying to dupe anyone, create a click storm on Reddit or anything. They were just messing around and found the large hollow 2.5 kilo technique plates that look like 25 kilo plates to be hilarious. And so they decided to slip them onto the barbell. In fact, it was Yang Zhe and Tian Tao who were tickled the most by these plates. However, Liu was a good sport and really played up to them and to the camera, pretending to strain against these extra heavy squats when really it was barely ever even more than he would put overhead in a competition. Some context for this training session. I was in Switzerland for the 49th Challenge 210, a bronze tier Olympic qualifier that just happened to be the chosen event for the most dominant weightlifting team of the 21st century, Team China. It was a completely surreal competition, seeing Liu Xiaojun, Shi Zhiyong, Li Wenwen, Li Feibin, Li Dayin, Tian Tao, and a bunch of other amazing lifters all walking around fields full of Swiss cows with the Alps in the background in your very stereotypical Sound of Music looking yodeling style village. It was just such a juxtaposition of elite Chinese weightlifting precision with this unbelievably laid back, cheese eating, cow milking town. They all looked so unbelievably out of place. A bit of info also about their best squats, just for some extra context. Liu had told me that his best back squat ever was 305 kilos, though over the last couple of years we haven't actually seen him take anything over 270 kilos, which is actually less than his best ever front squat of 275 kilos, and even then it looks relatively maximal. His technique, though, is somehow even better these days, and his words, not mine. So I guess that kind of accounts for the loss in absolute strength. Tian Tao is even stronger. He's hit 320 kilos for a relatively fast single, but he's also repped 310 kilos for a double, 300 kilos for 4, and even 270 kilos for 10, all with no belt. I'm unsure of Yang Zhe's best squat, though I do know that it's a little below Tian's, despite being a couple of weight classes up. But with significantly longer femurs, he still produces an extraordinary amount of force, just isn't expressed as well in a squat. His snatch, on the other hand, shows the difference between the two. Li Dayin, who was coming fresh off 3 silver medals at the World Championships, and Shi Zhiyong, who was coming off 3 gold medals and 2 world records, in fact went heavy in the power snatch this session, and really heavy in the pulls, even hitting some accessory work afterwards too. Now, that whole 50-minute video is currently up on the Weightlifting House Patreon page for our supporters if you want to check it out. It just really helps to get Weightlifting House to competitions and catch these sorts of moments. I've stuck a link in the description for you guys. But it was amidst Shi Zhiyong just warming up in the power snatch that I heard some laughter behind me, and when I turned my camera, I saw Yang Zhe and Tian Tao jokingly loading up Liu's bar for him, from what was supposed to be 170 kilos to 220 kilos, instead just to 175 kilos. And honestly, despite having filmed Liu a fair amount, I've never actually seen him act like this. He seems either to be in complete focus, maybe smiling a bit when he makes the odd mistake in training, almost just out of embarrassment, or he's yelling and pulling his singlet down after winning one of his 5 World Championship titles. But I guess it was the fact that he wasn't set on competing 2 days later, and also he was coming off a rough back injury from less than a month prior at the World Championships, where he'd won the gold medal with his international competition PR of 207 kilos. So the stress for this competition, and maybe even this training session, was incredibly low. Despite how cramped the training hall was and how much I was trying to avoid getting in anyone's way, which is something I think that you really ought to avoid doing as much as possible as a member of the media team, this was the most fun Chinese training session I've ever filmed. These guys really are class acts, and just because they look stoic on the platform, or are able to power clean their openers for the win and just decimate the rivalry of the rest of the world, or consistently sit atop a weight class for a decade, they are just like us in a way. Training cannot always be so focused and serious. In fact, my interview with Liu Xiaojun, as well as the Liu Xiaojun interview with Tian Tao, really shows a side of them that has been lacking in the sport. Hopefully before the Olympics I can find my way back into a training hall with these guys, just to see how the postponement of a year has affected their training and their mindsets. I knew that they were all turning up because I'd been hanging out with the guys who run Liu Xiaojun Barbell, as they were setting up the interview for me with Liu that I carried out the following day. As far as I knew, they were just going to move around with some empty bars, maybe throw on a little bit of weight, but ultimately do very little. The reality was actually pretty different. They split up into their usual cohorts, with Liu and Tian lifting together, as well as Yang Zhe, who regularly lifts with them. And then Li Dayin and Shi Zhiyong lifting together, and Li Feibin and Feng Ludong also sharing a platform. Whether these groups reflect different friendships within the team or are simply split up based on exercise selection, I'm unsure, but they are pretty often in these groups. In fact, several other Weightlifting House videos are of Liu, Tian and Yang, or of Li and Shi. I actually noticed Tian Tao initially kind of clock these 2.5 kilo plates that had been stacked up a few meters in front of him, and I saw him go over to them and hit them and kind of feel out the hollow sound from inside them and show some of the guys around him. So I knew that he was aware of these. I just never thought that he was actually going to pick them up and actually slide them onto the barbell. Also, as a quick heads up, I'm thinking about starting a new series for the channel, going through the Olympic categories week by week and creating a bit of a preview for the delayed Olympic Games. Who's qualified, who hasn't, who needs more Roby points, as well as the biggest total snatches and clean and jerks from the group over the last 18-month qualifying period, basically just mapping out the landscape in as great detail as possible. Let me know in the comments below if you want me to do this and if this is something that you'd like to see, as we kind of all aim to fill this weightlifting shaped gap in our hearts from the current dearth of competitions. Don't forget guys, for weekly news shows and interviews, check out the Weightlifting House podcast, as well as weightliftinghouse.com for barbells, thumb tape, training gear, and more. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and check out Patreon for more from the Chinese squad. Oh, and yes, to those of you who are wondering, some of the audio from this video is actually from a different video. There was a point during this training session where I accidentally turned off the microphone, and so some of the audio is missing. After salvaging what I could, as well as a little bit of sneaky editing, I was fortunately able to put this video together and hopefully not make anything too obvious. To those of you who did notice, what are you going to do?